Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sarah Avery, and I am the Executive Director of Quanta Change. And thank you so much for joining me today. So, what I want to talk about today is affirmations, like law of attraction, the secret, or more generally, just the idea of changing your thinking to somehow change your life. And why I say that, at least in the long run, doesn't actually work. So, people tend to use affirmations for things like this, countering negative thoughts and feelings, maybe eliminating negative self talk or trying to boosting your self esteem, motivating yourself to do the things that you should, the things that are good for you, maybe some other kind of positive change in your life that you're trying to bring about. And, those are great goals, right? You want to feel good and you want your life to work well. So great goals to try and work for. So has doing affirmations worked for you to bring about some of those changes you're looking for? If so, that's fantastic. I think it's always great to find out what works for you and, stick with it for as long as it works for you. Or has it not really worked for you? If that's the case, it's not your fault. It's not because you haven't worked hard enough or found the right technique or the right wording or something like that. So I'll explain today why that is. But, in general, I see three basic kinds of responses people get to trying affirmations. One is the kind of person who says, it's always worked for me. It works great for me now, today. So there's that response. There's a second kind of response, which is, it used to be that way. It used to work for me. It was working great for me doing affirmations. I was feeling better. Things were working better in this way, in this way, in this way. Somehow that changed. And I don't know what changed. I'm doing the same things and it's not working anymore. It's kind of mysterious and I don't know what happened. And the third kind of person is the kind of person who says, I tried so hard. I tried multiple techniques. I studied up on it. I did everything exactly as the book or the teacher or the video said to do. And I'm not getting any results from it at all. I see other people getting results. I'm not getting results. Why? That's so frustrating, right? If this is you, so frustrating. So I really hear you on that. And today I'm going to explain why, if you're in the second or third category, that is, that either they stopped working or they never worked. So, but are you thinking, hey, wait a second, Sarah, you said affirmations don't work, but you just told me that there's a kind of person that they do work for. So what gives? Why are you being so inconsistent in such a short amount of time? Well, I will explain that today. It's really in the long run, I think they tend to stop working for everyone at some point if they worked. So I will break that down and explain it. So what is the reason for these three different kinds of responses? Well, it's because of your survival mechanism for dealing with your learned distress. So let me break all that jargon down for you. Your learned distress, learned distress is the quanta change term for the feeling that you absorbed very early in life that there's something wrong with you, just being yourself as you are. You absorbed this before the age of 2.5, before you had any choice in the matter. And alongside the time that you were absorbing learned distress from the negative ways that people around you felt about being themselves, your brain was also developing a survival mechanism that allowed you, well, to, survive, to keep going with the presence of this awful feeling that there's something wrong with you, as well as a way to fit well, kind of like a puzzle piece with the people around you, your parents, your older siblings, other early caregivers around you. And so your sense of self is what's developed by the age of 2.5. It stores how you feel about being yourself, and it contains learned distress, and it contains your survival mechanism, and your sense of self is using the negative feelings stored in your sense of self to automatically generate all of the negative conditions and situations and thoughts and feelings that you experience every day of your life. Automatically generate means beyond your rational input or control, beyond the ability of your thinking brain to handle it, to deal with it, or to change it, really. So we've got this sense of self that contains your learned distress and survival mechanism, right? And there are 6 basic patterns that learned distress and a survival mechanism fit into. And at the end of this video, I'm going to detail what those are and tell you how you can find out for free which one of those patterns that you have. But these 6 patterns, this is going to sound confusing. These 6 patterns fall into 2 basic buckets, okay? So one of those buckets is the survival mechanism that allows you to keep learned distress really well under control. It allows you, when negative feelings come up, if they do, to really get them back under control, to keep moving through life, to keep moving ahead. So that's one basic kind of survival mechanism. The other one is a survival mechanism that just says the way to survive is to feel all this negative stuff, is to have it kind of bubbling out all over the place. Does that ring a bell for you? If this is you, you probably are like, yeah, that sounds like me. I know, I have that kind of pattern too. I totally get it, right? And so for the people whose survival mechanism allows learned distress to stay under control, helps you control learned distress, affirmations tend to work really well, at least for a while. For the people who learn distress is like bubbling out all the time, maybe has been your whole life, affirmations tend not to work very well. Is that starting to make some sense out of why things have worked differently for you than they have maybe from your friend or your family member who's been trying the same thing, and you're looking at them thinking, wow, that's working really differently for you than it is for me. That's so weird. We're doing the same thing. So I hope this is making some sense. And so what about, because there's a third kind of person, right? The person for whom affirmations used to work and now they're not working so well anymore. What about that kind of person? Well, so learned distress, this feeling that you absorbed very early in life that there's something wrong with you, despite your very best efforts, learned distress for all of us is rising in intensity over time. It's building up in intensity. And what that can do is, at some point, for the people whose survival mechanism has allowed them to keep learned distress pretty well under control, that rising intensity of learned distress can overwhelm the survival mechanism, can mean that you can't really keep learned distress so well under control anymore. Is that starting to make some sense of maybe if you're this kind of person, why things changed for you at a certain point, why they stopped working the way they used to be working? I hope that's making some sense. So yes, what I am saying is that what affirmations do is allow those people who have a survival mechanism that allows them to keep learned distress under control. It allows you to rebury learned distress, I would say. It allows you to keep it back under control, get it back under control. I know that may sound awful because you think, no, I think it was helping me get rid of the negative feeling. I wish I could say that's the case, but it is my experience over guiding people through this quanta change work for the last 22 years, having seen lots of folks who come in saying, this used to work for me, it doesn't work anymore. In my experience, that means that they were keeping learned distress under control. Affirmations, other kind of work, were helping them do that. At a certain point, that didn't work anymore because the intensity of learned distress just got too high. So that's lousy, right? That's awful. All of that sounds pretty awful if you're the kind of person for whom affirmations are not currently working and you really wish that they did, because you want to feel better and you want your life to work better. But the good news I have today is that the quanta change process was developed to deal with this exact problem, that you need to be able to not get learned distress under control, because at some point controlling learned distress doesn't work, whether that's been your whole life it hasn't worked or at a certain point it stops working. Quanta change was really developed to say, instead of controlling learned distress, let's get rid of it. Let's peel off layers of it permanently. And that's what the quanta change process allows you to do. So in order to do that, I'll briefly say that the way quanta change works is that it works with your brain during sleep. And that's for two reasons. One is that sleep is when, and specifically REM sleep, when you dream, is when your sense of self that stores how you feel about being yourself is getting recharged. It's getting recharged, just like you plug your cell phone into electricity to recharge it. Your sense of self is getting recharged every night during the part of the sleep cycle in which you're dreaming, called REM sleep. So that's one reason that quanta change works with your brain during sleep, because it can get into that part of the sleep cycle when you're actually recharging your sense of self, how you feel. The other reason that quanta change works with your brain during sleep is because during the course of the quanta change research, they discovered that there was this really big roadblock to changing how you feel at a deep feeling level. And that was that while your rational brain is operating, there's sort of a wall of protection around your sense of self that prevents you from, well, like thinking your way out of your learned distress. Maybe you've done affirmations for a long time and you're thinking, well, momentarily I feel better, but then I wake up the next day or maybe an hour later, I'm just feeling the same awful way. That really reflects the fact that your rational brain is putting up a roadblock to this deep feeling level change. But when we work with your brain during sleep, you can actually get into your sense of self and peel out layers of this learned distress permanently. So when you're going through the quanta change process, what happens is as you're peeling off layers of learned distress, your brain, what you're telling your brain to do is, instead of recharging with that awful feeling that there's something wrong with you, you want to recharge with this other feeling that's stored in your sense of self. That is your core natural well-being. This is the feeling at your center that you are just great being yourself, that you in your uniqueness are already perfect exactly as you are, no change needed. So as you start to recharge with your core natural well-being, layers of learned distress are peeled off permanently, and that natural well-being that's been kind of overwhelmed or squelched by so much rising intensity of learned distress, natural well-being expands to take the place that learned distress was sitting, and you feel better and your life works better. So that's what it starts to look like with quanta change. And maybe you're thinking, well, that sounds good, change during sleep, Sarah, but really? So let me give you an idea of how that could really be. So I'm going to ask you a question. How often have you started out your day with the thought that if you work really hard, today can be a total disaster? Have you ever? No. You have never started out your day. No one starts out their day thinking, I can work really hard and make today disastrous, right? Nobody does that. But negative stuff happens anyway. You're not thinking it. You're not trying to make it happen, and yet it's happening effortlessly, right? That is the work of learned distress. That's the work of your sense of self pulling out of that learned distress bucket to generate automatically, beyond your rational input or control, moments and situations and interactions and thoughts that feel horrible effortlessly, right? So when you peel away layers of learned distress and your natural well-being takes up more and more of the space in your sense of self, your sense of self gets to pull out of the well-being bucket to generate situations and interactions and thoughts and moments and conditions that actually feel good to you as effortlessly as the those negative situations have felt to you. That's how quanta change works, and that's what it's doing, is bringing about more and more of your life generated automatically from your core well-being. So let me talk about a couple of examples of what this looks like. So the first one, I'm going to talk more generally. One of the things that people deal with a lot, and try to use affirmations for a lot, come to me for a lot, and that I see, is that people tend, the most fundamental need we have as human beings is to matter, is to feel that we matter in ourselves. This really speaks to sort of the self-esteem goal of doing affirmations. And so what the presence of learned distress does is makes us feel like we have to do something or be some certain way in order to matter. Maybe it's we have to be perfect. Maybe it's we have to achieve some certain thing in our personal life or our professional life. Maybe it's that we have to get other people's approval. Maybe it's that we have to win at everything. Maybe it's that we have to fit in with a certain kind of group of people or in a certain space in the world. So you can probably think of this. If it's something I haven't, that's a short list. You can probably think of what it is that you say, in order to be okay, I must do this or be this. So this is what I work with people a lot on, because what well-being says is I'm already perfect just being myself. And what I see when people have that kind of change through the quanta change process is suddenly they say, that thing that I've always had to do, that thing, that way that I've always felt I needed to be, how I needed to look, how I needed to act, whose approval, whose love I needed to get, which thing I needed to achieve, either in my family or in my work or in my life somehow. Wait a second. I don't have to do that. I feel good enough just being myself the way that I am right now. I don't have to do that anymore. And it's not something that we've talked about very often. It's something that I've never even discussed with my client. They just come to me one day and say, that thing that I've always felt like I had to do or be, I don't feel like I have to do it anymore. It is such a relief. It is such a weight lifted off my shoulders. I feel like I have more energy. I can actually focus on what really matters to me, who I really am, what I really want to do with my life, instead of feeling like I have to really be beholden to that certain way of doing or being myself. So that's one kind of change that I see, that I think that affirmations are trying to drive at, but generally don't achieve in the long run. The other, I will give you a specific example on the other thing. The other example I want to give you, this is, and I wonder if you can relate to this. Do you have any clutter somewhere in your life? Maybe it's in your closet or your garage. Maybe it's your email inbox. Maybe it's you've got too many phone pictures on your phone and you're about to max out your storage and you're thinking, I gotta clean this out, but I just can't. Maybe it's been something for years that you've been trying to get on top of. Can you relate to this? I certainly can. Lots of us can. Lots of my clients can. So I had a client who came to me and she said, my husband and I have been moving for, a couple of decades now. And every time we move, we don't clean stuff out. We just put everything in boxes. Some stuff has stayed in boxes since the last move, and we just move it. Even if it's across country and it costs us a lot of money to move it, we just have kept moving this stuff for years and years and years, not cleaning it out at all. And she said, I have been wanting for years to get on top of this, to get this stuff cleaned out, and I just haven't been able to. And she'd been working on this issue in various ways with me as a quanta change client. And one day she came to me and she said, wow, you know what happened? I started to get stuff cleaned out. And she kept going. She kept going for an entire month. And during this month that she was cleaning out everything, every extraneous bit of stuff that they didn't want anymore in their entire house, there were two things. One thing was, believe it or not, if you can imagine, if this feels hard to you to clean stuff out and to get to that and actually do it, I bet you know how sort of overwhelming it feels, right? To have a whole house that you need to do that to, you feel like you need to do that with. And so one of the things that was happening for her during this month, I just kind of couldn't even believe it. But she said, you know what? I got vertigo. She was super dizzy to the point of being nauseous a lot of the time. And even though to me, that would be the perfect excuse to not clean out clutter. I don't know about you, but I hate being nauseous and I hate being dizzy. But she kept going. Even though she was super dizzy, she was still cleaning out stuff. And the other thing that happened during the course of this month, now she is deathly afraid of mice. Sorry if this is a trigger for you, really sorry. I'm going to talk about mice for a second. She was cleaning out stuff in the basement. She found a dead mouse. Now, normally she said this would have been the case for her to tell her husband, I'm leaving the house. I'm never coming back to it. You will clean out the rest and we will move now. I will never walk back in this house. That's how scared of mice she was. She said she walked upstairs to her husband and said to him, can you please get that mouse out of there? He did. He got it out of there. And she went back downstairs and she kept going. And she got this whole house cleaned out that she had not been able to do for a matter of decades. And she said, I don't know what happened, but it felt totally different. It felt easy. I just felt like, hey, I think I'll do this. I think I'll keep going. This thing that she had never been able to do. So that's another great example of what it's like to have motivation to do something that feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere and that it propels you forward instead of you having to kind of drag yourself kicking and screaming into some thing that you just cannot get yourself to do. So if any of this rings a bell for you today, I hope that you are feeling a bit hopeful that things really can change, because they really can. I've seen it with so many people, even the kind of person who has felt like I try things and I work as hard as I can at them and they don't work. I've seen things happen really well for even people if that's your kind of pattern. So like I said at the beginning, I was going to tell you these 6 patterns of learned distress and how to find out which pattern you have. That's really the first step to finding out if quanta change might be a good fit for you, might be a good next thing to try in feeling better. So the 6 patterns of learned distress and survival mechanism are called the idealist, the perfectionist, the caregiver, the optimist, the dictator or benevolent dictator, and the defeatist. And these 6 patterns, the reason to find out which one of these you have is not so that you can dive more deeply into it, so you can figure out somehow how to control that pattern. It's really so that you can see what you're going to be unlearning, what you're going to be peeling layers of off through the quanta change process. So the way that you find out which one of these patterns you have is you're going to go to my website and take a free, in-depth, scientifically validated personality test that measures your learned distress. And I will graph your answers and send you a report that shows you your pattern of learned distress, your survival mechanism for dealing with it, and how quanta change typically helps people with that pattern feel better and have their lives work better. So to do that, you're going to go to my website, Quanta Change, QUANTA change.com, and click on the free report button at the top right of the page. So I hope that you'll go and take the test. I'll send you your report, and that can just be the next step in finding out how quanta change might help you feel better, might help your life work better. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you will join me again next Friday for another way that quanta change really can help you feel good being you. Thank you.